Jessica Sprague has this really awesome tutorial on her website for adding drop shadows to acrylic elements, and it's drawing a lot of attention, and I've received quite a few questions about it, and so I've decided to create this tutorial. Someone asked me if I hadn't had a method to do this in a different way that I shared several years ago, and the answer is yes and no. And let me just go ahead and get into the tutorial, and you'll see what I mean by that. Here is an arrow that I made using the glass action from Opaque. It's very much like the acrylic elements that are being sold out there right now. And just to show you why this is a problem, I'm going to go ahead and add a soft edge drop shadow to this element. Now you're going to see that it made the element darker, and it's not quite as see-through as it was before. And so that's why we need a special method to add drop shadows to opaque items. Now what the person was remembering from a couple years ago was a method I shared for utilizing vellum, and you can quickly make a simple piece of vellum by drawing a square, creating a new layer, which I already did, and filling it with white, and then simply lowering the opacity to it. And this is something I recommend as something quick to do, especially if you're trying to journal on a busy patterned background such as this one. Now you've got a perfect element that you can use for journaling on. Now if I apply a drop shadow to it, having created in this method, it works fine. But if you would have brought this in to Photoshop Elements as an opaque piece of vellum in a ping file, and you tried to add the drop shadow, it would would make it darker, just as I showed you it did with my arrow. And so here's the method that we had done previously. If you hold down your control key and click here on the layers palette to get marching ants around that piece of vellum, which could be any shape, not just square, and then make your paper layer the active layer, and I'm going to hit Control J on it, and you're going to see that I have now just made a brand new square, or I'm sorry, rectangle shape out of the background layer, and now I can add the drop shadow to that layer. And that is how we had previously had a workaround for opaque items and adding the drop shadows. Of course, it works very easily if your opaque item is just on one layer. If this piece of vellum was partly on paper and partly on a photo, that's going to make it a little bit more tricky to add that drop shadow. And since mostly I use this just for my journaling right on the paper, this is the only method I have used. However, Jessica has come up with this great idea, and I used the difference mode in one of my recent tutorials, so I was aware of it, and it just never dawned on me to use it in this manner, and this is just really awesome. She's an awesome lady. However, up here she has a step in here, and it's confusing to people because it's not something that they utilize often, and I must confess that if I were to, unless I did this often, If I were to want to do this again, I'd have to keep coming back to her website to check on this to remember. I'm trying to get back to just the arrow to remember her steps. And what she has done is created a new layer, and then on this bottom layer, go to the edit. Well, before we do that, let me show you what happens when you hold down the control key and click on the layer in the layers palette to get those marching ants. And let me zoom in. You can see this is just not going to make a good selection. You see all those extra lines because of the opacity of the glass or the plastic or the acrylic elements. It's adding these extra lines in the selection. And so if I were to cut this out of the background paper to add the shadow as in my previous method, this just doesn't work. And so what Jessica has done is found a way to make this shape into a layer of its own. And she's done that by going to the Edit drop-down menu. Well, let me back up again. She's wanting to fill this in with black, and if you try to just use your paint bucket tool to fill this in with black, you're going to see you have a problem because of the opaque area. See, and it's missing various areas. And so as a workaround for that, she's gone in and chose to fill the layer with black and preserve the transparency. And you can see it has changed it some, but now when you hit it with your paint bucket tool, you can now easily fill it in. And so she's added that little extra step in there in order to just make a black shape. And it's great. I would have never thought of it, but I'm probably not going to remember how it works again, and I'd have to go right back to her page. And so I've played with this for a while, and what I would suggest doing is to instead get your magic wand tool and simply click out here, and you'll see I've now made a great selection of the area outside of the arrow. And so I'm going to simply inverse that selection, and now I've made a selection inside the arrow. And I can make a new layer and simply paint that layer, and here's that new layer, and you can see I've arrived at the same step that at the same conclusion as she had in getting that shape in just a black shape on the page. And so I'm going to be more likely to remember this step using the magic selection tool than the other way, simply because I use these tools all the time. Now here's the cool thing that she has suggested doing, which I really like and didn't even dawn on me. But let me go back and repeat. If you have a solid color black layer, your codes are going to be 0, 0, and 0. So black is the absence of any color at all. And so if you're going to get the easiest way to remember this is if you want to get the difference of nothing, you're going to get nothing. If you go back to math class and you have 0 and you take away 0, you're going to have 0. And so if you change this layer to the difference mode, you're not going to be able to see it at all. Then you can add the drop shadow to just this layer. Now if you're really paying attention here, you'll see there's some really cool inspiration. You could just utilize that with any shape. just to create a cool effect on your paper. And then when I add the visibility back in on my element, you can see now I have a drop shadow, and I'm going to go ahead and toggle off this black layer without a drop shadow and with a drop shadow, and you can see that it is not changing how clear that arrow is. It is maintaining the clearness of that arrow. And so in the same light, if I wanted to do it in the old method, I would get the magic extraction tool, inverse the selection, and then I can go to my paper layer and just press Ctrl J and add a drop shadow to that layer. And both of those would arrive at a similar effect. And so I really love her new method of using that difference layer, but I hope that this little long quick tip, it's supposed to be a quick tip, but it's already almost 12 minutes long. I hope this little long quick tip has been beneficial to you to help you understand more about her method, and maybe eliminating that middle step that's hard to remember in her tutorial, and sharing with you the extraction, or the magic, it's too early in the morning, the magic wand tool to grab that selection to arrive at the same thing. It's something you might remember without having to go look that up. And so for all the people that have been asking me to help them with this, I sure hope that this helps you, and I want to thank Jessica for the awesome idea. I'm not stealing this from her. I'm just enhancing it and trying to help the questions that are coming at me. Thank you for watching.